Hello and welcome. This is another video covering game mechanics, and in this video we're going to cover surfaces. And when I say surfaces or surface effects, I have to say that Divinity Original Sin 2 comes to mind, which is another Larian game. One of the main reasons I actually loved that game is its combat mechanics and specifically the surface mechanics. I just found it so interesting that you could do all sorts of things when um, the ground was on fire or the ground was wet, and then you applied fire to it and you could create steam and limit opponents' vision, etc. So I just find it so interesting. When just a bit of history on this, when the game, well, early access of Baldur's Gate 3 was first released, the surface mechanics were very similar to Divinity Original Sin 2. But then we kind of had a community uproar, so to speak, and they tuned it down a bit, but it's still quite meaningful, as you'll see in a moment. I think you can do some very nice things. So if you're a person like myself who wants to min-max the shit out of their character, to be honest, because that's where I'm at. And basically, when it comes down to damage, I want to do the maximum damage every turn as possible. Um, you will want to apply some surface effects to assist you in that, in certain occasions at least. So in this video, I'm going to cover the wet condition basically. So let's hop right into the game and I'll show you what you can do with the wet condition. So how do you apply the wet condition? In the game, there's a number of ways of doing that. One of them is the create water spell, which clerics definitely have. Another way is barrels of water. You could, with a high strength character, you could throw a barrel, or there's flasks of water that you can either find or buy. So in this instance, I just threw a flask of water, and as you can see, we're in the Gith Patrol fight, and we've applied the wet condition onto South Baretha and one of the other Githyanki patrols. And I'm casting each bolt with Gale, who was I kept specifically kept out of combat just so he can have a first turn attack. And as you can see, it did an insane amount of damage just with a first level spell slot. And that's because when their characters are wet, they're vulnerable to cold and lightning damage. And as you can see, the water puddle beneath their feet got electrocuted, so they receive additional damage every turn that they're actually stood in there. So that's really handy as well. Main drawback of obviously applying the wet condition is that the characters or enemies are then resistant to fire damage if you wanted to do fire damage to them afterwards. But I guess you could also look at it from another perspective, in the sense that if you know that an enemy does high fire damage to you, you could literally do a create water spell over your party, and then you immediately become resistant to fire damage. So that's definitely one way you could well, I wouldn't say abuse it, but use it towards your advantage is the case. Now, what I don't know, which would be interesting to test, or if someone who's watching the video has already tested it, then you can maybe leave a comment below, is what happens if you have the wet condition, someone does fire damage to you, does the water on yourself then evaporate, or do you still keep the water or wet buff for 3 turns? That's something interesting, because for the lightning damage, you still keep the debuff. For the cold damage, as you'll see in a minute, you still keep the debuff. So that was a really hefty ray of frost there. It's insane. So yeah, I'm interested to actually. I would imagine you still keep the buff is the answer, but it would be interesting if the fire kind of evaporated the water off you, right? And then you can only gain the kind of the resistance on one turn, because the game has fire resistance potions in it as well. Yeah, so that's just a thought. If anyone's tested it, please feel free to leave a comment and just let me know what your findings are. Otherwise, I will probably just test it quickly and might make another video if it's anything noteworthy. Thank you very much for watching. That was all I wanted to cover in this video. If you like this type of content, please feel free to give us a like and leave us a comment with your feedback. All of the feedback I've received to date from everyone has been really helpful, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for commenting and helping me grow. So yeah, if you do like this channel and the content I'm creating, please feel free to also leave a subscribe as well. Thank you very much again, and I will definitely see you on the next one.